Hello, everyone. My name is Ashton Vanderslice, and this is my portfolio critique. As an introduction of who I am, to sum up myself in a single sentence, I am a well-dressed, endangered gentleman who loves to glorify God in my music and my conversations and my lifestyle. And all that has been cultivated here at Berry as being a dual degree engineering and creative technologies double major, a wind-shaped scholar, a classical pianist, and a Nerf and knives enthusiast. But what brought me here to this wonderful lab? Well, many moons ago, as I was a freshman wandering around on my bike to explore this wonderful campus, I came across a weird shed between two barns. And that weird shed had a bunch of 3D printers and a bunch of fabulous, really cool people in it. And one person that caught my interest was a guy named Zoo. He was a senior at the time and wicked smart with 3D modeling. And I had only barely touched the surface. And he was able to show me what Fusion 360 was, which is the 3D modeling program that Creative Tech uses. And he got me started in getting to learn 3D modeling here and 3D printing and working on my own designs and bringing them into life. So I had a grandiose project. I wanted to make the Dwarven key from the Lord of the Rings. Well, Zoo wasn't quite at that level. So I got to meet Mr. Chris Whitmire and learn from him on how to improve my 3D modeling skills even more. I was like, you know what? I have to figure out how I can be a part of this major somehow. But do I drop engineering? I chose not. I chose to add creative tech and stay engineering and continue through my path at Berry with both degrees. Now, as far as my time in the creative tech department, I have very much focused on prop design. I have a lot of enjoyment with video games and movies and just pop culture. And so I've had great enjoyment in creating my own custom arrangements of these wonderful pieces and objects that we see in media today. Many include video games like Titanfall and Portal 2, TV shows like Doctor Who, movies like Pirates of the Caribbean and Thor. The projects I will be showcasing today that best explain my work over my 3 years with Creative Tech and 4 years at Berry is my Mjolnir project, a 3D modeling assignment I was given and did way too much for. My 3D modeling final, which is a clash up I made with Nerf and Titanfall 2. My Fusion Companion Cube, which is a joystick mouse. And then my final capstone, the Bull Moose, a original Nerf blaster I made from scratch, and an assembly guide that comes with it. Now, firstly, Mjolnir, the great hammer of Thor, the Norse god, but also romanticized in our wonderful Marvel universe. Now, this here is the hammer that Marvel has Thor wielding. But up above is what is traditionally seen as the Norse symbol for Thor's hammer, as well as it's encircled by Norse runes. Sadly, they're just gibberish, I have checked. But they are cool, and they bring the Norse religion and the Norse culture that God comes from, that's been brought to life through movies and video games and comic books of Thor that we know and love. And so I took these aesthetics and these designs to put into my own make. So I was tasked with simply creating like a square with a long handle and a pommel, and to work on these things called chamfers. That was my assignment. Did I do that? Absolutely. Did I want to do more? Absolutely, because I loved 3D modeling. And this was my chance to dabble and try my skills on an easy assignment to see what else I could do. So I put in Norse runes. I put in the traditional Mjolnir symbol from Norse mythology. And furthermore, I modeled my handle in such a way that it looked like it was leather wrapped by its pattern. And that was my model. It's all digital. You can't touch it or anything unless you 3D print it. And that's what I did. I took my model, I made it as big as I could make it on my 3D printer, printed it out, and it weighed less than a pound. Well, as we know from Thor's hammer, only those with true honor and will can wield Thor's hammer. Alas, anyone can wield a plastic hammer. So I had to make it a little bit heavy. So I took the handle out, I drilled holes into the hammer head and filled it with BBs, lead BBs. And then furthermore, I drilled a hole through the handle to put a rebar piece of steel. Glued it all back together, soldered to melt the plastic back and cover the seams, leather wrapped it, painted it, and now it weighs about 15 pounds. It feels like Thor's hammer. It is awesome. It sheens with the metallic paint. It has a leather wrapped handle. It is quite literally a work of art, but it's also mine. I put my own additions to it. I made my own adaptation. My next project was a mashup between Nerf and Titanfall 2. Titanfall 2 is a video game, a futuristic shooter where you ride this giant robotic mech to fight other people with evil mechs. And one of the guns in the game is this. It's called the Smart Pistol MK6 or MK2. Most pistols, real life and video game, you have to aim to hit anything. Not with this gun. You point and click, and it hits anything in front of you. It's so much fun. And so I really wanted to, again, work on my 3D modeling skills. But I wasn't quite at the place to fashion a dart blaster all by myself. So I took this already made dart blaster from a shop called Moose Mod Shops. And he created this blaster, and the 3D print files are open source and online to print yourself. So I took his model and I aesthetically reworked it to better match the gun from the game. And this is my model up here that I reworked to resemble this. And of course, it's all digital. You can't touch it unless you have a 3D printer, in which case I do. The colors is because that was the filament I had on hand, so I made quite a rainbow gun. But I made a dart blaster using my models that I had reworked, and then using a hardware kit I bought from the shop to make a functioning dart blaster. Now, one key important part was 3D prints and tolerances is really difficult. And things have to be sanded quite a bit usually for things to slide smoothly, as was the case with this. It took many hours of sanding for it to even function, for the trigger to slide, for the slide on top to move at all. It was quite a pain, but it was a great joy once it was all built and worked flawlessly. Now, one other project I had was the Fusion Companion Cube. This is a joystick mouse that's supposed to help with 3D modeling, to help just shortcut some of the movements and stuff you do while you're rotating bodies and dealing with the modeling program. The assignment was to create an electronic PCB, to solder the components, to do some code, and to 3D model and 3D print an enclosure. And Dr. Zane had given us a very great guide on how to make a very simple and clean and minimalist enclosure to model and 3D print and to finish up the project. So I simply asked him, can I do more than that? And he said, of course. Again, I love 3D modeling. So I took the challenge to take his minimalist idea and to do a little more with it. This is from a video game called Portal 2. It's a puzzle game where you have this blaster that shoots portals, and you have to use these portals to teleport throughout the world to get to different stages. And one key part of this puzzle game is this guy. It's called a companion cube. That's it. It doesn't do anything. It's just like this really heavy cube that you have to push around, jump on to get to other places, use it to weigh down buttons so you can walk through doors. That's its purpose. It's your companion cube. And our mouse was kind of a cube shape. And at the moment, I was playing Portal a little bit on my free time. And so it gave me the great idea, why don't I take this cube that I'm having to model already for a class and just make it resemble this video game prop? And so that's what I did. I made my own custom model. I watched his video, especially to get the insides and all those dimensions correct. But the outside I did completely on my own to model as best as I could from the companion cube from the video game. And then I had two other touches. The joystick in the middle, I used this logo to emboss into it and then to fill with resin. So it made it even bolder of this dark, thick, shiny black resin. This logo is from the video game as well. See, the video game as a puzzle is part of this big science experiment. The big science experiment is owned by Aperture Laboratories, and you're kind of stuck as their guinea pig. And so this is the big logo that you see throughout the game as you're running through basically their levels and their maps and kind of their training course. And so it's another very key signifier to the video game Portal 2. And the last thing that I had is the lights. I had a startup animation that I coded for it that brought a lot of colors from the video game. So the video game has a bright blue portal and a bright orange portal. Also has some evil droids that have a dark red eye. And so I used those colors to start as part of my startup animation, having a circular red eye circle the joystick in the middle, having blue and orange on either side, and then flashing as they switch to get the essence of the portals from the video game. All in all, I did a lot to make this joystick themed and to also test my 3D modeling skills, and it turned out very well. And lastly is my capstone, the culmination of my time here at Berry and the culmination of my time in the creative tech department. As part of my capstone, I made a 3D printable dart blaster, as well as a guide using animations to help show the assembly process. And I called it Bull Moose. And it's called Bull Moose because I took a lot of inspiration from a guy's his own dart blaster that he calls the Moose. And he uses, my two O's are zeros, and he uses zeros and then a 5 and a 3 to spell out Moose. I took a lot of inspiration from how he designed his blaster to design my own. And then this style of rifle, as it is called a bullpup, which is where the magazine is behind the trigger compared to in front of the trigger. This is a very technical way of designing a rifle and is uncommon, even in the military, and especially uncommon for dart blasters. But the person I was taking inspiration from, his Moose was a bullpup styled rifle. And so I also wanted to take that challenge and take my own approach for that. And therefore, the Bull Moose is what I named it. Now, I have been part of the Nerf community for many, many years, ever since I was a kid. But that doesn't mean everyone else has. So I'd like to explain just what in the world this great community is and why in the world I was designing a dart blaster as part of my great capstone for creative tech. Well, as you can see here, I'm not the only one. There are many people who have designed 3D printable dart blasters, and it's been a big growing thing ever since 3D printers became accessible by the average person, and not just big industries or universities, but now people could take their 3D modeling skills and put it with the dart blaster community and the Nerf community to create custom models, to create kits that other people could print and buy hardware and build themselves in kind of a DIY process instead of just going to Walmart and buying whatever Dart Zone or Nerf is selling to you. Furthermore, these designs are usually 3 times more powerful, more accurate, and definitely more fun than what Nerf is selling to us. However, there's some issues, of course. with all these great designs, not all of the designers make very good assembly guides. Some of them do. This is both an example of a good design and a poor design. The designer of this, he goes by the name Captain Slug, and he's the one who made the top right blaster. It's called the Caliburn. All of his documentation is very detailed. He has lots of words to perfectly describe every assembly process. And he has all these very clear isometric pictures showing the pieces. But sometimes you have black on black, or you have arrows that you're unsure where they are actually pointing to. And sometimes you want to just grab that model, and what if I could just rotate it to the other face? What if I could just flip it over? Except it's paper, or it's a digital printout. And that's the only image you have. And so I wanted to take this a step further. I got to create a custom Nerf blaster, which has been a lifelong dream of mine. But I wanted to add something to what the community was lacking, which was a very clear design. And so I decided to make animations for my assembly guide so that, sadly, the user can't rotate as they wish. But hopefully I've designed it well enough that I've rotated around how the assembly is conjoining itself to show multiple angles so that the user assembling the blaster has a better understanding of where the screws are going in or where pieces combine together. As part of my capstone, I had 3 major design goals. My first design goal was that I wanted to limit the amount of 3D printed pieces to be less than 50. And I did that. I had 24. There are 24 individual 3D printed parts, and that includes whether they are the exact same part that's printed multiple times. That still counts as an additional piece. And I have about 18 hardware pieces. This is not including screws or nuts. And in my research, the average 3D printed blaster was around 20. And so I was very impressed. This is the first time I've ever designed a dart blaster. And I was able to bring my numbers to average. These are designers that have made 20 designs, have made 5 designs, that sell their designs, and they get money from that to produce more. And here I am, a simple college student, packed with all kinds of other stuff for senior year. And I was able to get something very similar to what is already being produced by those far more experienced and far more capable than I am. And my second design goal was functionality. Now, of course, I wanted my blaster to function. I wanted it a step further, though. I wanted it to function basically as soon as it was assembled. Like I said with my Nerf and Titanfall dart blaster, the kind of rainbow pistol, that took a lot of effort after I had printed, after I had assembled. It didn't work at all. It took hours of sanding and filing for it to slide and then give, and then it started to become a little smoother so that it could function. So I wanted to design my blaster in such a way that you print it, you assemble it, and it works with less than 2 hours of post-process work. So that could be some sanding, some filing. I wanted to say that this doesn't include, when you take the print off, there might be supports. This doesn't include removing supports. That would just be a part of taking your print and having the actual part that you need. Because this can take some time, depending on how you chose to print the part. And sadly, we have the wonderful hazard sign, which I will explain. But my design goal 3 was, as I mentioned, I had animated assembly guides. And as we know from TikTok and YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels, the attention span of our society is about 90 seconds. 90 seconds of information. And yes, that kind of seems like a bad thing, but also that means that those producing these videos are giving information within 90 seconds. That is important or is interesting, and there's nothing superfluous. So going off of that, I wanted to make sure that my assembly animations were similar. It was 90 seconds of the information that is necessary and no more, no less. My animations, however, are so detailed and so elaborate that poor Google Slides couldn't show them. But I assure you they are there, and they are working. Now, about my future. Well, firstly, I would love to keep improving my blaster design. I have many, many ideas on how I can make it better, how I can make it cooler. That's definitely a project I will continue to work on. This summer, I will be leading a young adults team in Oregon and Washington, traveling around to world churches to put on Vacation Bible School. This is all under the Village Missions Organization. And then I'm actually going to continue with education. I'm dual degree engineering here, which is a joint program with Georgia Tech and Kennesaw State University. And I'll be going to Kennesaw State University to get my bachelor's in mechanical engineering. And then after that, who knows? Only God does. And so I hope to go into consumer product design after my time at Kennesaw State University. Anything from a computer mouse to the design of a water bottle. And that is my presentation of my time here at Berry, my time here at Creative Technologies, and a dual degree engineering student. And this is my work that I've had over the past 4 years.